I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone. Piss off!
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian. So
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How did I do
insane!
that?
You're insane!
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to you. Welcome. Where are you? I've been downstairs at the bottom of the escalator at South by Southwest, waiting for you guys to arrive. We're meant to be social networking or networking in a socially, I don't know what we were meant to do, but we're here right now. And I feel kind of weird being back in Austin at South by Southwest. I've just actually submitted my pitch proposal for South by Southwest 2021. And maybe I'll tell you a little bit about it later once my guest, Wesley Faulkner, is on the show. Wesley and I have always had this amazing time together at South by Southwest. It's always been a moment in time where the two of us have been able to come together and connect and catch up. And as I was saying to him in the green room, we always and only have meaningful conversations with one another. Bob Farnham says, nice jacket. Thank you. I'm actually dressed up today. I'm still not wearing pants, but I'm actually dressed up for the first time. I've got my wedding band on. I've got a watch on. No job interview, no funeral, thank God. But I decided to actually dress up for Wesley. Let's just say I'm dressing up for him. So today actually is National Bank Transfer Day, and it's also Guy Fawkes Day. Remember the 5th of November. And so put them together. Basically, what I'm saying to you is, please transfer money to me immediately. Just send it my way. From yesterday's show, I think we found out that $5 is not enough. The show is worth more. So I am Jaffe Juice on Venmo. Send me money, damn it. Send it to me now. I'm just kidding. You don't need to. But it is National Bank Transfer Day. Maybe you'll send Wesley some money. He deserves it more than I do. Wesley is a developer advocate at Daily, and he's a wonderful guy. He has a wonderful story, and you're going to find out more about him very, very soon. Let's just do birthdays quickly. Bev Uriah, happy birthday to you. Ethan Butte. Is that right? I mean, I've been on your show, and I'm like thinking, is that how to pronounce your last name? Beauty, because he is a beauty. Ethan Beauty. Who else is having a birthday today? It's funny because Wesley will talk a little bit about what it is to have a contact on Facebook versus LinkedIn. Are these my friends? Are they my contacts? Are they my colleagues? How do I regard Craig Fuchs, for example, or Shanta Chakma as opposed to someone on Facebook? But happy birthday nonetheless. We'll figure it out once he comes on the show. I also want to single out little Josh Zev, who had his bar mitzvah today. In a socially distanced outdoor event. That's actually why I'm dressed to impress, dressed for the occasion. So wanted to say happy birthday, mazel tov to him for his bar mitzvah, and also to his wonderful family. Well, now it's time for our seated soliloquy. And apropos for the times we're living in and the moment in time that we're living in, today's seated soliloquy is called waiting. Remember that old, that almost something that children would say, why are we waiting? It's getting irritating. Well, that's what we're doing right now. We're waiting. Waiting for what? The proverbial penny to drop? Of course, we're waiting for the big announcement, the continuation of the existing presidency or the passing of the tiki torch, couldn't resist, to a new one. Let's focus on those two words for a moment. Why are we waiting? What are we waiting for? What I mean by that is very simple. Why put our fate in the hands of others? Why not be masters of our own fate, our own future? If you want change, make it happen. If you want justice, equality, inclusivity, diversity, be the change that you so desire. Make the change in your own life, starting with the way you conduct yourselves in your personal lives, in your professional lives, in your dealings with your community, in your dealings with strangers. Yesterday, Lodro spoke about eulogy qualities versus resume qualities. I think this is the perfect way for us to apply the most simple binary rubric to evaluate our own actions, to be accountable to ourselves, to control the controllables, as it were. And let's face it, when it comes to life, there isn't much we really have control over except for the behavior of that dashing, good-looking person staring at us back in the mirror. Don't get me wrong, waiting is fine. Patience is a virtue, and being patient for a time when the person staring back at us in said mirror nods and smiles in approval of a job well done. But you know what's even better than slow and steady wins the race? It's the first mover that gets the worm, or gets everyone moving in the same and hopefully right direction, and keeps everyone moving through momentum, motivation, and the satisfaction of accomplishment and progress. No matter what happens in this election, each and every one of us has the power to effect the kind of change that truly can change the world. One act of kindness at a time, one act of solidarity at a time, one act of forgiveness at a time. One. Today is day one. Let's do this. And one person I can tell you that lives probably that mantra of one day at a time, of one act of kindness at a time, of the ability to treat every day as if it was day one, is Wesley Faulkner. Wesley Faulkner is a first-generation American. He's a founding member of the government transparency group Open Austin, and he ran for Austin City Council in 2016. His professional experience also includes work as a social media and community manager for software company, let me make sure I pronounce it right, Atlatician, I think I got that right, and various roles for the computer processor company AMD, Dell, and IBM. So a bunch of companies you've never heard of before. Wesley Faulkner serves as a board member for South by Southwest Interactive. So hopefully he'll help make sure my pitch or my panel is accepted. You never know. My ulterior motive for having him on the show today. And he specializes in something called developer relations. Let's bring him onto the show. Welcome, Mr. Wesley Faulkner.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And you're close. It's Atlassian.
I was so tongue-tied with it. I kept on wanting to say Atlatician. You know,
it's an Australian company. So maybe that's why it threw you off a little bit.
Yeah, yet again, the Australians are screwing me. So, so Craig Fuchs is here, and he said, "Hi, Joseph, great to be here." So, you know, an act of kindness, wishing someone happy birthday, and I have someone new who's watching the show. Maybe someone new that I'm, you know, not just connected to on LinkedIn, but now actually connected to in real life. Who else is here at the moment? Bob asked if that was Anne Handley's dog. I don't believe so. Unless Anne Handley is, you know, submitting her dog to Stock Photos Inc. My mom is here. Hello, Ma. We didn't catch up today, but at least we're doing it this way. Bob says he likes the look, and Tom says we should dress up for you tomorrow. For Tom, that just means putting on pants. Stephen Rubin is here as well, and Tom adds great seated soliloquy once again. May we all make our opportunities shine like JJ does with the seated. And finally, Leslie Laredo is talking about that whole idea from yesterday, eulogy versus resume qualities, was one of the best takeaways from yesterday. So yesterday, Wesley, I had Lodro Rinsler, who specializes in meditation. And I mean, I think you probably get it straight away, this whole idea of everything you do is either a eulogy quality or resume quality, right? It's either all about you right now and making you look good, or when you are gone from this earth, what people will say about you and how you impacted other people's lives.
Right.
So I just thought so it was a beautiful thought. But today we're going to focus on you, and no doubt we're going to get additional thoughts from you. Where do we begin? Should we begin with South by Southwest?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about how that all happened and how it's not happening this year.
Yeah, I mean, so I thought it was interesting. Are you still on the board?
Yeah, I've been on the board since 2010. So
wow,
it's little over 10 years now. It's been a really great journey. And a lot of people ask me, how do I get on the board? How did you get on the board? I don't know exactly how you get on the board formally. It was I wrote a really nasty blog post about my experience at South by. I call it the good, the bad, the ugly. And I just listed out all the stuff that worked, didn't work, and definitely needs to get better. And I got contacted by Hugh, the head of South by Interactive at the time. And he said, hey, if you feel that it could be made better, how about you help make it better? And that's how I got on the board.
Well, you just said, I mean, that's how you get on the board. You're right.
That's how I got on it. I don't know if there's a formal process, an application or what, but I got tapped on the shoulder, which is lucky.
Well, you know what? It's not so much about a Nostagram. I think it's just about the ability to express your feelings and your feedback, right? And just tell people how you feel, good, bad, or ugly.
That's one thing I have, is very strong opinions, even if they're not necessarily warranted. It's a hindrance, and sometimes it helps me to get opportunities I wouldn't have otherwise. I think being able to speak from the heart and be truthful is my strong suit, and I've gotten some really good things from it. But it's allowed me to explore opportunities. I think if I didn't raise my hand and saying, this is how I feel, this is what is important to me, I don't get on anyone's radar. And so I'm glad that part of me exists, at least.
Well, and you've always done that with me as well, quite frankly. I mean, you've always told me what, you've expressed your opinion, and sometimes you've been complimentary and sometimes you've been constructively critical. But the difference is, I know where you're coming from. I know you're coming from a good place, and I know you have good intentions. So how can I take that anyway, but the best possible way, which is the right way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just sharing your opinion doesn't mean you have to be mean. And that's why I try, and it's something I work on, not to be mean, but to help and improve. If kind of to your soliloquy, it's rude to criticize something that someone can't control and is not in their ability to control. For instance, if you're on stage at South by and I was critical of the lighting, which you had no control over, that is just meant to make you feel bad. That's not meant to help you improve at all. Well,
so that's I want to unpack that for a little bit. It's rude to criticize something that person can't control.
How do you determine what, in fact, is controllable? Is that subjective, or I mean, how do you determine sometimes whether something is in fact controllable or not? Well, I mean, I think within a band range, like if you don't like someone's outfit and they can't leave and change, then what's the purpose of telling them that their outfit is ugly? That's just to help them. That's just to hurt them. They can't, so they control that next time, but they can't control it right then at the moment. So if that is your immediate feedback, then that's way out of bounds. If you don't like someone's nose or their eyes or their hair color, of course you can probably change their hair color, but that's more of an opinion and not and how someone is presenting. But it's not talking about facts. It's not talking about research. It's not talking about examples. It's not enlightening. And if you're aiming to make someone better, or something that they're doing is better, and it doesn't have to do with something that's kind of like window dressing, then I think that is the really heart of it. Don't try to fix someone, but lead them with some perspective.
Interesting how facts versus opinion can come into even this conversation as well, right? Subjectivity, objectivity. What I found the other day, I ended up in a hole, and I am minimizing my angry conversations on Facebook these days, because the show has really changed me in many levels. But in this one, someone was kind of angry with me, saying that they're just quoting the facts, and all I'm doing is coming up with opinion. And I just held back to say, but you do realize that your facts are in fact not really the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're actually, it's your interpretation. It was just interesting how their fact,
like lies, damn lies, statistics kind of
right.
thing.
Their fact versus opinion was in fact not very factual at all. It was just very, very meta, shall we say.
The fact is, I wrote it down 5 minutes ago, and I can repeat it. So there is documentation for what I'm saying.
That is a fact. That is a fact. So for people to kind of get to know you a little bit, we sometimes on the show do, in fact, and by sometimes I mean all the time, do our little fun facts. So here's the first fun fact. Lots of things I'm finding out about you that I just didn't know, which is you live on a mini urban zoo. I don't even know what that means. How do you live?
We have a lot of animals. We live in Texas. So I don't want to give the impression that I have a lot of acreage, but it's like 0.7 acres. It's like a normal size area for where we live. But we have a lot of animals from different varieties, because we homeschool our kids. And so it's a great learning opportunity. And my partner eventually wants to be a homesteader. So live off the land and be sustainable. And so it's kind of like a mini version of that, or a trial run, but we have a lot of animals.
So what is the most unusual animal that you have?
Unusual.
Well, they're just boring dog.
A bearded dragon.
Wow.
Probably the most unusual.
Okay, that's like a kind of a lizard, right? An iguana or a Komodo. That's
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah,
and
we have two bearded dragons, a leopard gecko, 2 bunnies, 4 chickens, 2 guinea pigs, 6 kittens, 1 cat, 2 dogs, a betta fish, and we have a pond stock full of fish.
Wow, that's impressive. Now, you also spoke about homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
That was that pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, about 2 years ago was when we started homeschooling. Our son was in private school, and our daughter was younger and not school age yet. And he had we all did, like a really bad experience, to the point where he's like, I need a break from school. And so we started homeschooling our kids then.
So it's been no change for you, basically.
Well, the change is kids and interactions. We don't have there's a good unschooler community here in Austin, where we have a lot of families with a lot of kids, and we'd do these outings where we'd go to the park or go to like a play area or a play gym and get together, explore the forests. That's all been removed since COVID, because we're still have a pod of people, but it's a lot smaller, and the activities are very, very limited.
It's interesting for me, just listening and learning about this. There are many aspects to your life that I'm finding out maybe for the first time, but also just things that I realized I've never really sat down and spoken to people about, like just homeschooling and now the transition in COVID. What I find is interesting is how you've organize yourself. I mean, the power of community. It's like ironic that you and I are talking about community, but that's how we know each other. But also how there are different communities and sub-communities within communities and how, I guess, you have been affected from a socialization standpoint. So it's kind of interesting. By the way, Craig says hi to you.
Hi, Craig.
So, he wanted to say hi. And Tom Morris says he loves the concept of the mini urban zoo. He's got 2 big dogs and 4 active cats. So, he likes it as well. And Craig adds he has a similar homeschooling situation pre-COVID. Best move we ever made. So I might have to figure that out myself. So I want to go back to South by for a second, and I'll just touch on a thought, which is I was meant to speak at South by in 2020 this year. And obviously that didn't happen. It was going to be all about built to suck and, angry at the corporations and put yourself out of business, awesome stuff. The panel was accepted. But when I went back and proposed a panel for 2021, I completely changed it. And voting, I think, opens almost soon, right? Any day. And my panel is called How I Reinvented Myself During a Global Pandemic, and You Can Too, the story of Corona TV. And my goal is to actually walk people through the entire journey, the entire evolution, the mistakes, the triumphs, the things that happened accidentally, show them the software, in a way do what Chris Brogan is doing as well, which is open up the kimono, step into the sausage factory, be part of the rising tide that floats all boats. And you and I were talking about Corona TV in the green room, and you had this very interesting observation about the show, which I absolutely loved. And I was like, no, just save it for the show. You referred to the show as a variety show of the modern age. So what did you mean by that? And maybe give that example of the movie that you thought about.
Well, I think so. Part of it was that there's like the night show where there's a monologue and then they have guests who are famous and like they're pitching a movie.
Like you, right?
They might be talking about something interesting that they have done or been a part of, but the real meat of the show is like tearing apart that facade and removing and not that polished version of them, but instead where they are real and they're talking about their life,
real.
What's
going real in the background.
Yes, my kids keep coming in here for some reason, and what's real in their life, what they're going through, what it was like even doing the finished product, which is kind of what you're doing. It's like meta of saying, here are my problems. This is where the difficulties, or I broke my arm and we had to take a few minutes out of the reshoot or whatever. And the movie that I brought up that kind of illustrates this example is called Stranger Than Fiction. And it is a Will Ferrell movie. And Emma Thompson is the one who is the author who kind of narrates it. And Will Ferrell is just a regular guy. He's an accountant, I think, even like a boring job. And he's walking one day and he's hearing, today was somewhat of an ordinary day, but he didn't know that what was in store for him. And it's like, he's like, what's in store for me? Because he can hear the narrator's voice in his head and he doesn't know that he's part of this story. And so they talk about how boring his life is, like what he does every day. His job is boring. His commute's boring. He doesn't have any hobbies. But the person, the Emma Thompson's character, the author, is writing this as a lead up to some greatness of some big thing that's happening in his life, or this thing that may seem ordinary, but you get this intimate experience from it, from his perspective. And it sounds like the greatest story in the world. So I think everyone that I talk to has that in them. They might say, oh, I don't do anything special. And then you find out that their car broke down and how they had to walk 3 miles to get some help. And it's just like, wow, how'd you survive that? Oh, it started raining. And they all have a story in them that's just really, really illustrates how amazing people are just in general.
I mean, you said something when we were chatting, and you said it's almost like the ability to, you mentioned the word ordinary, that it's like bringing on ordinary people and I guess, to reframe what you were saying and then find the extraordinary from within the ordinary. And the one thing that I've done when I've looked at this is, if I can't find something interesting in every single human being that on this planet, then I've failed them, and I've failed myself, and I've failed, my community and my audience, which is because everyone has to have a story. Everyone does have a story. And that's the joy of doing the show, is to find that story and be able to, as you say, peel back the layers of the onion without making them cry, at least not not maliciously, and at the same time, the goal is not to make them cry at all, right? It doesn't have to be an Oprah moment. I told, don't make me cry. Exactly, right? So I just loved how you were able to assess the idea of the show, and see me for my own journey, because you've known me through various iterations. You've probably known me being maybe being a little bit arrogant at times, maybe, I don't know. Let me ask you, how have you seen me over the years? How have you known me? How have you related to me?
Funny. We talk. So I guess the resume and the
eulogy
is kind of like, I think we all flow through that, where we're looking to like focus on ourselves at time in order to get us through, or we try to, as an introduction, try to summarize. Hold on for just a second, okay?
I mean, that to me is about as, I think it's the first time in 140 episodes that's happened, which is awesome, by the way.
They keep totally coming awesome. In. And so I had like, they're doing like this ninja crawl on the ground to like, because they know that I'm like on so like, and they're like playing with my feet. Like, it is super distracting. But I think going back to, I think if you're talking about me and you, and I think this show is a really good illustration, is that there is a certain fit and finish and polish that we all sometimes put on. But in our conversations, in our relations, it's always been acceptable to have flaws, to actually demonstrate your humanity. And I think that is the most, that is the thing that actually makes us feel like we're connected. Because the whole resume, even the eulogy, is like putting someone on a pedestal to like, and with removing their imperfections and polishing their facade. But it's not relatable. What's relatable is knowing that we all have problems and we're all struggling in some sort of way at different times, in different ways.
I mean, you said it very eloquently, and as you were saying it, Jan was saying, might ordinary be real, and so extraordinary, a heightened appreciation of reality. That's also very meta, and very real, as Tom says, a real moment among many real moments, but this is the most real. Yeah, I mean, this show can go in any direction, and I think it's a good setup, because for the first thing that you wanted to talk about today, which is this, by the way, something I'd never heard of, but something that's quite easy to understand if you just take the word, right? Neurodiversity. And, to set up what, this idea of neurodiversity, you wrote a very real article called My Journey Through Dev Rel, which I actually read as probably the right way, right? Dev Hell. I mean, that's how I read it when I saw the image, etc. But talk about, the real Wesley Faulkner, everyone sees in front of you. What you see in front of you is the real Wesley Faulkner. But talk about your journey and how that relates back to this idea of neurodiversity.
So neurodiversity is understanding that the brain is not fixed. I think we talked about like a standard brain, and that if something is outside the standard, it is considered deficient or defective. Neurodiversity is accepting that not all brains work the the same way. They work differently. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a deficit. It just means that it's a difference. So that's what neurodiversity is kind of like wholly accepting all the different ways that people think, people work, and people function. And if we take Rayman, that movie, the kind of premise is there's something wrong with Raymond. He can't, he kind of talks in circles. He has to have a routine. But then you take him to a casino, or you drop some toothpicks, and he's able to do this higher order math like a computer. It's kind of like that. Like, he may be, his spectrum is pushed into, if you look at everything as different skill sets, his analytical skill sets like off the charts. But some of his like social aspects are maybe diminished compared to what is a neurotypical or a standard brain. And that's okay. That's just how he's made, but there's no curing it. There's no dealing with it in terms of like over medicating. Like, all that stuff can help it, make it more palatable for other people, but it doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means that there's something different. And we all need to find our path and our way to make sure that we can lean into the things that we're good at and not feel like shame or deficiency about the things that we don't do so well. And my post is about me on my path, finding a way to first get some self-acceptance, and then finding an environment that accepted me for me.
It strikes me, even when I wrote the word, to find the background the background behind, not behind me right now, but behind us. The word autism and Asperger's immediately jumps into the tag cloud. And I thought to myself for a second, why do we assume that exceptional behavior, that Raymond's exceptional behavior, whether it's the card counting or the photographic memory, we see that as exceptional but not normal? Whereas why couldn't we flip it? Why couldn't that behavior be considered to be normal, and our behavior of being able to, I don't know, network on Match.com or Tinder or whatever the hell, or playing Bejeweled, all these superficial things that we do, why would that not be considered to be not ordinary and exceptional? It's like society has basically termed our day-to-day mundane behavior as being normal, and that exceptional behavior from someone who's not like us as being, atypically abnormal. And it isn't.
Yeah, I think the world kind of puts traits in buckets and then gives a value to them. Let's take it out of neurodiversity and just think about someone who is introvert and extrovert. Like, we take introverts as being secluded and bad, and extroverts being gregarious and out there as in good, and saying, I wish I was more extroverted, but less people don't say, I wish I was more introverted. I think, generally speaking, there are different people who perform or act a certain way, and there are good things and bad things to both. Like before, I was telling about me giving opinions, and like I'm very opinionated, and sharing that has helped me a lot, but it has hurt me a lot too. And everything is contextual, right? And if you find an environment where you thrive, where you can accept yourself and don't try to force your way into a person or into a structure or into some sort of model that you think you need to be, then you can be more accepting and try to really move towards where you actually are and what you're good at.
So Craig says, I don't see the point in getting on a stage at work and being someone else at home. Just be who you are. This has worked for me throughout my career in my limited capacity, loving the show. And Stephen says, all special need is beautiful in its own way. I posted... But
it shouldn't be a special need, though. It's just a need.
I think maybe we could also say, yeah, I mean, it is. Stephen, you are corrected. You see, now you have encountered Wesley as you should. Absolutely. And Tom adds, we're all unique, just like everyone else. The key is to find the context where we can flourish. All
Right.
good points. Let's take it one step further, which is Wesley, in the article, which is unbelievably generous because you are so open and you share so transparently. You talk about the fact that you have dyslexia, you have ADHD. On top of that, being a black man in this America, and every time that I've encountered you, you've been searching for a company that appreciates you for who you are, accepts you. I want to quote something from the article. You said, "I found myself once again searching for the company that could see me for the potential that I hold." And you talk about how disappointed you were by finding a company and finding a person in that company who really did appreciate you for who you were. And then that person left the company and everything just fell down. And I just remember the pain that I've always felt, or at least the emotions I've always felt, seeing that disappointment in you. Now, the story has a really, it has a good ending. And hopefully it's just, one of many chapters that are good endings for you and new beginnings. But I wonder if you could talk about that battle, going from company to company and trying to find your place in this corporate world. And I'll just say one more thing and then I'll shut up, which is I kind of kept pushing you to even say, to hell with companies. They don't understand you and appreciate you. Just become an entrepreneur, be like me, be a crazy unemployed guy like me. But talk a bit about that journey and that particular challenge or struggle, or maybe you don't see it in particular as a challenge or struggle.
It's a struggle because I live in a world that has a structure not made for me, and I would love for eventually that the world would understand and accept differences. And so it is a struggle for me, not because there's something I feel is wrong with me, but I feel that there's something that is not really quite understood and approached and convinced. Like we talked about the election, and you can see how it's breaking down. And if I went out and said that Donald Trump is racist, I still would need to have that conversation with someone else on the other side for them to really understand what I'm talking about. And when me, in terms of my role and what roles that I've had at companies, when I've had to have conversations about social media and specific approaches, I've had to do that where I've feel like I have to re-explain the whole thing to even get be able to say, now I want to do this one thing. And so it needs all of this context and all this convincing, where I'm not sure if, I'm the best to give all that context. And because of my brain also, I see sometimes several steps ahead. And to me, it's obvious, and which makes it hard to explain. It's like a native speaker trying to teach you their language. You say, go to the store instead of go store. You need to have to in there because it just sounds right. But instead of really explaining the structure of language and why you need that transitive in there. So it's kind of like that. I've had problems explaining what I need to do, what I want to do, even though that I've done them and they've come with success. The success itself felt anecdotal to what I was trying to do. So so when I had results, when I delivered on campaigns and met my goals, because I would get there from an unconventional, conventional, circuitous way, people would think that I was lost or I didn't make any sense because they were unable to follow me. So who cares how the outcome that I could deliver that? They cared about understanding my process, and I wasn't always in the place where that process was really transparent. So I felt like I always struggled. I always struggled to be heard. I always struggled to convince about what the right paths are, or even when we're on a wrong path, have struggles with saying that won't work because this is a pain point. that you're just glossing over. And I've had those ignored because I've been a minority, not just from race, but also from the way that I think. And so if you're the only person in the room who has a dissenting opinion or is pointing out flaws, which also, like I said, I'm outspoken, then I might be the squeaky wheel that doesn't get the grease but gets the axe. And so it's always been really hard to go on that path.
The quote today's a very different episode because there are two quotes that you're going to have to identify. Isn't that unfair of me? Now you've just shared the way you process and compartmentalize, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to test you now twice instead of once.
Sure.
So this is the first one. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases.
Have no idea where that's from.
And nor should you. This was Carl Jung himself. I've been trying to get him on the show for so long, but he does not return my DMs on Twitter for some reason. But everyone is different. And I think what's so interesting about this, Wesley, is I've always known you as, I mean, you just said it, right? You spoke about the X. I was kind of like that too in a corporate world, which is why I haven't, as I've told many people, I haven't been employed since 2002. Because I found it very hard to stay silent and keep silent. And like a flower, I withered when I was surrounded by corporate politics. And it was just very hard for me to just stay silent and not just speak my mind for the betterment of the entire team and for the idea and for truth. So I know it intimately, and it's why I just chose to stay away. Now, we'll talk about what happened, but then something in the middle that you talk about, which is very, very, very emotional. You said, suicidal thoughts crept into my mind and became an extended resident, which, by the way, is really, really beautifully written. It felt like there wasn't a place where I fit in with this world, and subsequently, I figured maybe I shouldn't be in it. I don't know what it is to have those kinds of thoughts. And I can just imagine that there were just so many layers. There was the layer being a Black man. There was a layer having dyslexia, ADHD. There was a layer just your own personality, which has nothing to do with any of those things that I just mentioned. You are you. You are the boss of you. You are the CEO of you. You are different to everyone else. And then on top of that, there was this idea of, where do I fit in? Which company will have me and house me, and appreciate me? How did you get through this dark time?
So I like to mention that this was also during the whole Corona and lockdown. So it's the thoughts were about me and finding a place before the lockdown. At least I could be around people, but being secluded left me with my own thoughts for a lot of that period of time. Work wasn't going well. I eventually lost that job previously, but it's one of those things where I worked my butt off to be this other person that wasn't me. And then even that I failed. I couldn't overcome my own self. It was just the core. My core has such a giant gravitational pull that even if I was able to peak or spike on doing something, I always came back to my own self. And so it ruined my job, which then thus put my whole family in jeopardy because I'm the sole income provider, which then made it feel like I'm unstable, which made tensions in my relationships with both my kids and my spouse. And then it totally tore apart my self-esteem, where why even go for another job when I'm just going to fall back into that rut where I'll get the job, I perform well, and then I kind of like morph with like, as I learn, I try to change to the environment, and I feel inconsistent, even though I'm still delivering, taking advantage of some really early bets that pay off later, but are kind of like small and seem insignificant, but turn out to be really big things that make really large impacts. And getting to that cycle where it feels like, okay, well, what have you done lately? I was like, I'm doing things all the time, and people really can't grasp that. And so like, yeah, I felt like no one's like me. I felt super unique. I tell someone that I'm neurodiverse, they're like, what is that? I tell someone I have dyslexia, they don't understand how to handle that. And just like explaining the work of like why everything is, they cannot understand me, and I don't have the capacity of transferring all that knowledge of what it actually means to be me onto someone else. So one of my previous employers, I was in a job where I was doing a lot of public speaking. I was talking about technical topics. I was on shows that reached developers as being in developer relations, and that was ideal for me. And then instead, I was moved into another environment where it's very like writing intensive. Being dyslexic didn't help. And I felt like I was put in a position to fail. And that was a choice that I made. It was a choice that I was told, and I felt really prosecuted, or like singled out and hurt. And so it really did a number on my self-esteem, and I just felt trapped. And then George Floyd happened, and then you see that there's no justice there. You see that there is enough counter examples of why that was justified. And every justification I had for myself existing, it felt like there was a louder voice externally telling me that I didn't belong. And that's something I couldn't escape. And I closed my eyes, I would see it. I look in a mirror and I would see it. And I had no hope for the future.
And how did you get through?
Luckily, I found
show us the light.
I got a peer group of not necessarily people who are just like me, but they were free thinkers, not locked into a set of processes that were really accessible to everyone. They came up with their own ways of finding new routes. And being around those people reminds me of the early days of social networking, when social was new and people didn't know, should you do a retweet? Should you see a DM? Do you use a hashtag? And everyone's figuring out what makes sense. I found a group like that in DevRel, people who were making the maps, who were plowing the roads that people would follow behind them. And I found that was more my speed of not just following, but leading and developing and exploring and trying and failing. And I was able to commiserate with them, even though they couldn't really relate exactly to my what I was saying. They related to the steps and the story of like really trying hard to impart knowledge in someone else's, and convincing them why your job is not only needed, but how you and yourself are successful, even though you might not articulate how to measure that success. They understood, and they can just see it. And being around a peer group where you have that lifted off your shoulders, where you don't feel like you have to explain everything, it made make me feel more accepted. And then I did the thing where I said, this is what I want. This is who I am. And a friend of mine posted my experience on Y Combinator forum. And that's when Daily found me. They said, wow, yes, we hear you. We see you when we want you. And so that ultimately, they saved me in more ways than one. I don't think they really know. They didn't know until I wrote that blog post, but yeah. They didn't really know what state I was in at the time.
I mean, how many companies out there could say that, could actually be able to, that is a eulogy quality for a company, for a faceless corporation out there, you know, which clearly is not one. That is not a company that is built to suck, one that can save a human being and not just pay them a salary and issue them a W-2 or a 1099, but actually give them that purpose. That is a beautiful story. And it's amazing. You say in this article, you know, I can't stop talking about these guys. I just want to keep talking about them. So Daly, you know, you Corona TV loves you for what you've done and what you continue to do. More companies should be like you. It's funny, in your article, you actually, I said there would be 2 quotes. This was another quote in the article that I think talks about hope. Just when you think there is no hope, I love this quote. There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. And I'm not even going to ask you to say who said it because you wrote the article. So you know who said it. It was C.S. Lewis. But what a beautiful quote that talks about looking ahead and finding those you know, those happy endings, because these are tough times, no doubt. So thank you so much thanks for sharing that with us and being so you know, vulnerable and you know, and generous with your story. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you. And I just want to say, for those who are struggling, don't give up. The history of things repeating doesn't necessarily mean that they will repeat forever. And the power was not accepting the world as it is, but it's accepting myself and then finding my place in it. And I think that is the piece that got me off that hamster wheel of going over and over and over again. It's just like, this is who I am. This is what I'm good at. And there's no disputing that. And I accept that. And that includes my flaws, and not every flaw, we talked about the double-edged sword, is a flaw every time. It sometimes depends on the context, and you just need to find your right context.
It's and you know, the thing about flaws as well, you know, it's one of those facts versus opinions, which is says who, right? Says your boss. You wrote it in this article, something about you were put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, which basically means, you know, the clock is ticking, the countdown has begun. I was like, I don't even know what the hell that is. I hope I never ever discover what a PIP is. But I'm so glad that you found a home, a safe home, but also a home that allows your talents in DevRel, right? In developer relations, with your specific expertise, subject matter expertise, in terms of understanding the power of not just social, but community. They are certainly lucky to have you, and you are lucky to have them. And I suppose that's the perfect employer-employee relationship, a partnership, right? As opposed to a one-sided affair.
Yes. They believe in the same things I believe in terms of community, in terms of product design, in terms of taking care of people that rely on you, and leaving no one behind. And also, doesn't matter how big or small you are, you're still equal. And which is really, and it shows, just like how Google kills products and have rival products and seems disorganized. The structure of the company reflects in the things that they produce. And I think Daly is a really good example on the positive end of that, where they really care about their employees. They care about the product, and that care and nurturing just flows through every part of the company. So
we are approaching the end of our time, but we have, we're very lucky to have a community. I am lucky to have a community. I'm lucky to have you, and I'm lucky to have a community. And in many respects, I think our Zoom after show, yeah, absolutely. Our Zoom after show has just become that. It has become, you know, that wonderful quote on community, right? A bunch of strangers who care about each other a little bit more than they should. And so Wesley is going to join us for hopefully about 30 minutes or so. I'm very judicious about hard stop at 3:30, and we're going to go to that shortly. But Wesley, I'm going to end the show today with a question that I've started asking every guest on a daily basis. And it's the only structured question that I actually do now ask my guests, which is four words. How do we heal?
We heal by embracing ourselves. We cannot give what we don't give to ourselves. So in order to care for others, you need to care for yourself. So realizing that you are made the way that you are, and that is perfect for you. You're the best version of yourself. It doesn't mean you can get better unless you really accept who you are.
You are wise beyond your years, my friend. You are yet another addition to our philosopher school of Corona TV enabled brothers and sisters. How can people find you? What would you like to promote? I have a bunch of links, as you are well aware, and I would love to share them. And that includes, by the way, that wonderful, I'll just put it on here as well. I've just started watching it, by the way, this video called Getting Through the Awkwardness of Networking Pre-COVID Edition. And I'll paste a link to that as well. So I'll give you the floor to talk a little bit about a few key links and ways that people can get in touch with you.
You can find me, of course, Wesley83 on Twitter. If you need me, I'm on, you can reach me at Daily. You can go to help@daily.co. But I'm also do a podcast once a month with other DevRel friends talking about community and DevRel at communitypulse.io. And that talk is one that I did about the awkwardness of networking, and I would follow the link that that you're going to post later. But if you wanted to read the article in full too, that we talked about and referenced in the show, it is pinned on my Twitter account. So it's already it's always at the top. It's way at the top. So you can find it there if you go to twitter.com/Wesley83.
All right. Well, Wesley Faulkner, it has been a real gift to catch up with you today. We can find out about some of your other interesting, I was going to say, should I say the word flaws or quirks? No, I shouldn't. I should talk about your special qualities, like being an intermittent faster, or your pet peeve when people stick their hands into the snack food bag or jar. We will find out all about you in the Zoom after show. Thank you for coming in today to our virtual studio. And I hope we'll see more of you in the future. It shouldn't have to be every year in Austin, Texas, right?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for everyone who's watching, because I appreciate finding that you find me interesting enough to view.
You better believe it. And as Chuck Norris would say,
You are Chuck Norris approved.
see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.